If you follow these rules after menopause, you can have tremendous, tremendous, tremendous results with keto. In fact, keto even lends itself quite perfectly to someone that is postmenopausal. So in this video, you're gonna have a very clear breakdown. I'm gonna make it very simple, very step-by-step. I'm gonna make it rule-based. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you 8 rules for doing keto after menopause. Now, the cool thing about this video is it actually works for people that aren't necessarily doing keto too. I just figured, hey, a lot of you have been asking, let's go ahead and let's dive into it. The big thing we have to focus on, the big overarching piece of all of this, is the fact that menopause is all about your estrogen levels being low. And we need to find some ways to either bring them up or deal with them. And these are just lifestyle changes and dietary changes that allow us to get the most out of the keto diet despite estrogen levels being a little bit lower. We always talk about estrogen being bad, but what about when we actually need it? All right, so we're gonna break it all down and have a lot of fun with this. Please do hit that red subscribe button and then hit that little bell icon to turn on notifications. That way you always get notified when I go live. And then after this video, if you don't mind, please check out Thrive Market. They are a membership-based grocery store that's online. And I have keto options, fasting options. Basically, I've assembled grocery boxes and grocery bundles, and I put them over at Thrive Market for my subscribers and people that watch my videos to check out. That way you guys can get the things that I would recommend without having to reference through all my videos and things like that. It's just super easy and super convenient, and it's all right there in the link in the description after you check out this video. But now, let's get you those rules. So menopause, in essence, mimics the last 2 weeks of a menstrual cycle. And what I mean by that is when you're looking at a 28-day female cycle, the last 2 weeks, the back half of that, estrogen levels are low and progesterone is high. Now you might notice some of these things. Let me know if these sound familiar. During the last 2 weeks of your cycle, you would feel more hungry. You would feel like your recovery was way down, like you were more sore and you just, I don't know, felt inflamed. You felt like you had specific cravings. You felt like you had brain fog, and maybe you felt like you were irritable or you had some kind of hot flashes and things like that. Sound familiar? That's because your estrogen levels are lower. Well, guess what? Menopause is not much different than that back half, except it doesn't end. It just, you crush your estrogen levels and they're not coming back. So the goal here isn't to elevate our estrogen levels, because that's not gonna work. We can't defy biology, we can't defy nature. But what we can do is we can support what's happening there by altering how we eat and altering even how we work out. So let's go ahead and start with rule number 1 that goes along with this. More recovery time. Yes. You need to take it a little bit slower. I cannot tell you how many women I see, they hit menopause and they start just beating the pavement because they're really just, their results are slowing down, so they work harder and harder and harder and harder, and they beat themselves up. Okay, when your estrogen levels are low, your cortisol levels can come higher a lot easier. Estrogen and cortisol kind of feed each other, but if estrogen is too crushed, then cortisol can go up. So we need to pay attention to this, and we need to allow ourselves more recovery. So I always recommend 25% more recovery. That means if you normally take 1 or 2 days off per week from the gym or from working out, add an extra day. Trust me, it's going to help you more than it's going to hurt you. Okay, you need to pay attention to this to control your cortisol. Now, on that note, another thing you want to be paying attention to is increasing your protein a little bit. Over the age of 50, we need more protein to stop what's called sarcopenia, to stop muscle breakdown. So it's going to keep your metabolism higher, but it's also, in the case of menopause, going to make it so your recovery is a little bit better. All right, let's go ahead and let's move on to rule number 2. And this one is one that I do talk about somewhat often on my channel, but I ask of you to just bear with me because we have 3,000 to 5,000 new subscribers daily coming in here, so they don't always see the things I talk about. Increase your levels of DHA. Eat high amounts of omega-3s, but ones that are specifically high in DHA. So if you go and you get a fish oil pill, or if you're looking at specific kinds of fish to eat, you should do a little bit of investigating to find out if they're high in DHA. DHA makes up 90% of the omega-3s in the brain, and it makes up between 30 and 50% of the overall fats in the brain. Very, very, very important if you are trying to support cognitive function. Now here's the thing. Most cognitive decline and most diseases, Alzheimer's, things like that, come into effect after the age of 60 and usually after menopause. Estrogen normally helps combat this. If estrogen levels are crushed, then we need to combat it and support the brain with those omega-3s. So sardines, although they sound kind of gross, right? Anchovies are really important. Get some oysters in, get some mackerel in, eat good amounts of salmon. If you don't do fish, try to eat some flax and chia, even though it's not DHA, it's a different kind of omega-3. It can still help and convert a little bit. Okay, so rule number 3, load up on the shrimp. What? That's kind of weird. And I know some of you are like, Thomas, come on, this isn't practical. You don't have to follow all these rules, but for those of you that like shrimp and those of you that like shellfish, you may want to dive in. It all has to do with getting those good amounts of iodine. And you might be thinking, well, what about iodized salt? Iodized salt is not good stuff, okay? Stripped of all the other minerals, and the iodine is just not, that's not how we're trying to get iodine. We want to get iodine from a natural source. Why do we need iodine? Have you ever realized that many of the people that talk about hypothyroid and have issues with their thyroid are over the age of 50? Well, it's because after the age of 50, particularly in women, hypothyroidism is extremely common. And there is some correlation between crushed estrogen levels and the thyroid dropping. So how do we combat this? Well, we have to give our thyroid what it needs. And our thyroid needs iodine to ultimately combine with tyrosine from proteins that we eat to really create thyroid, to create the thyroid hormone. So no better to get the tyrosine that we need from the shrimp, but also a particular shellfish that is already very high in iodine. It's perfect. I honestly think that shrimp is something that should be a staple in the female diet over the age of 50, and it's small enough you don't end up dealing with the mercury issue. So it's great. If you don't do seafood, you don't do fish, or you don't do meat, you might want to try kombu kelp. Kombu kelp, just one serving is 3,000 micrograms of iodine, which is literally enough to give you just the iodine you need for 2 weeks to support your thyroid. So really, really powerful stuff there. And also, don't forget the selenium, because you are going to need that from time to time to make sure that you can convert T4 to T3. That's just a fun fact. Rule number 4, and don't hate me for this because I'll give you a supplement alternative just in case, coenzyme Q10, ideally via organ meats a couple times per week. 2 to 3 times per week, I want you to have 1 ounce of organ meat, okay? Preferably like some beef liver or something like that. Some of you are saying, this is Thomas, I turned this video off, this is gross. You don't have to do that, but otherwise 300 milligrams of coenzyme Q10 via a supplement form. But the bioactive form from a true food source is going to be the best way. It just simply is. And it's also going to make it so you're getting all the other vitamins that you need, the vitamin D, the vitamin A, things like that, they're going to help you. Why is this so important? So coenzyme Q10 is tremendously powerful at increasing our energy. And when you are going through menopause, your energy levels will plummet. They simply will. Let me make things very, very simple in terms of explaining this. All right, so you have what is called the electron transport chain. Going back to biology class here. Basically what happens is you have a series of electrons and energy potential travels down those electrons to ultimately create energy for our body. Well, it turns out that the ketogenic diet increases what's called the redox span. That's the span between NADH, the first part of the electron transport chain, and the next one. What the heck am I talking about? Okay, bear with me. Coenzyme Q10 also increases the redox span. What does that mean? What is redox span? Thomas, stop, you're driving me nuts. Envision this. You have a bowling ball. Okay, and you drop this bowling ball from 2 feet. Well, the amount of energy that bowling ball, the potential energy from 2 feet is pretty decent. You know it's gonna, as it drops, it's gonna gain some momentum and gain energy. Well, what if I said, well, instead of 2 feet, we're gonna drop this bowling ball from 10 feet? Well, the action potential or the potential energy is going to be significantly more from 10 feet than 2 feet, right? By the time that bowling ball hits the ground, it's going to have more force and more power, right? That's because we've increased the span. Now imagine increasing the span with your electron transport chain. Energy potential has more time and more ability to gain momentum and trigger more energy. So coenzyme Q10 does this in tandem with the ketogenic diet. So it's simple. Eat your organ meats or take 300 milligrams of coenzyme Q10 daily and it's going to dramatically change how you feel. Rule number 5 is the 4 big important pieces of maintaining bone health. And it's very, very simple. Weight training. If you haven't weight traded before age 50 or menopause, you should be weight training now. Calcium, but only through the diet. Do not take a calcium supplement. Get calcium from sardines, get calcium from meat more than anything. Vitamin D by way of 4,000 IUs daily is what I would recommend. Okay, more if you're in a climate where it's dark. And 300 milligrams of vitamin K2, which helps the vitamin D3 and helps the calcium truly do its job. I'm gonna leave it at that. We know that osteoporosis is the real thing. The next piece is the one that's gonna blow your mind, rule number 6. You do need to pay attention and have more in the way of potentially phytoestrogenic foods. What is a phytoestrogenic food? Okay, we hear all the time that you should not consume soy or you should not consume these phytoestrogens because they mimic estrogen in the body. That means if you have an issue with high estrogen and you're eating these estrogenic foods, it's going to make it so your estrogen levels are high. But this could be a good thing if your estrogen levels are super low. Okay, so I'm talking about flax seeds, I'm talking about chia seeds, and I'm even talking about the occasional soy. to the occasional bit of tempeh or the occasional bit of tofu or anything like that. Another one that people don't talk about a lot that's technically a phytoestrogen is green tea. What this is going to do is it is going to elevate estrogen in the body a little bit. As a matter of fact, there was a study that was published. It's pretty darn interesting. So this one was a meta-analysis published in the journal Climacteric. Now, meta-analysis where they take a look at lots of different studies. They took a look at 10 different studies in this meta-analysis, and they found that actually consuming phytoestrogenic foods like soy and like flax in modest amounts ended up crushing the symptoms of menopause, crush the hot flashes and crush the fatigue. This is powerful stuff. We know that just a little bit of supporting our estrogen levels can reduce those symptoms. So it's not a bad thing. You just want to control it. And if you're premenopause, you probably don't want to be eating these things. But there's a time and a place for everything. And here's the interesting thing. If you add just like 100 milligrams of something known as DIM, diindolylmethane, you can get it on Amazon, super cheap, it's easy. That is going to help make it so that those extra estrogens don't get metabolized into unhealthy estrogens like 1,7-hydroxyestradiol, the bad one, right? We only want good estrogens, not bad estrogens. Video for a whole different day as well. Rule number 7 is you may want to consider taking in 40 milligrams of black COHOSH. Some people call it COHOSH, potato, but basically what it is it's something you can get in a tea form or a supplement form that is a selective estrogen modulator, which means that it goes around and it can modulate estrogens that are too high. So if you take that in tandem with consuming the phytoestrogenic foods, you can keep things under control a little bit. All right, rule number 8, dyslipidemia. What the heck does that mean? There is so much evidence out there and so much just, I don't know, hogwash out there too, talking about how after menopause, your lipid profiles get totally messed up. You see women after menopause end up with high levels of LDL, high levels of HDL2, high triglycerides, things totally out of whack. It is true, okay, and it has to do with estrogenic modulation again and how that all plays a part, but we do need to remember, first and foremost, the ketogenic diet is going to help you with that because it is going to mobilize the triglycerides for your body to use more, and it's going to make it so that the small particle LDL, the ones that truly are bad, are reduced, and you're left with high amounts of the good LDL. Yes, there is good LDL. The good LDL that actually carries the fats to the cell to get burned. You want to burn more fat, you need higher LDL. And if you're really concerned about this, I've talked about something known as the Mediterranean ketogenic diet, which is just like the name implies, Mediterranean style eating, lower fat in terms of just the saturated fats, higher monounsaturated olive oils, avocado oils, high amounts of fish, lean proteins, nuts, seeds, things like that. That could be the best diet for you if you're concerned about that and you notice your lipids getting out of whack. So if you do suffer from post-menopausal dyslipidemia, a Mediterranean ketogenic diet might be the way to go. I'll go ahead and I'll link out to that down in the description as well, so you can watch the video that kind of breaks down the meal plan and the strategy for that. So I know this was in depth, and I know it was maybe more than you bargained for, but I hope it helped you out. So as always, do keep it locked in here on my channel, and don't forget to check out Thrive Market down below in the description. I'll see you soon.